Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Lost Coast Podcast. Today, we have a very special guest with us. Her name is Anne Bernard, and she's a professional on helping others tell her story. She's a professional storyteller. So, Anne, welcome to the show.
Hi, Corey. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great having you here today. So, for our listeners here, why don't you give them a little background on you and, why you do what you do and why you love it?
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. So I teach people how to discover, understand, and communicate who they are and author who they're becoming through personal storytelling. And I'm really the last person who would really end up doing this. And I came about becoming a personal storyteller after an incident that I had. And so at the time, I was stationed with Marine Forces Europe and Africa in Germany, which is a great duty station. And when, when you live in Europe, you do a lot of traveling. You'd be crazy not to. So over Memorial Weekend, 10 years ago, this is in 2014, I found myself in Prague. And I'm walking in a park. I have my dog with me, so we're doing the walk in the park with the dog. And I saw this older gentleman. He was sitting on the park bench, and his pants were wet. I didn't know why they were wet. It caught my attention. And all of a sudden, I had a desire to go buy him another pair of pants, like to help him out, but I was frozen. And I didn't know how to help him. It was just a really weird feeling. One, it was my first time noticing this and wanting to do this, and then I didn't know what to do about it. And then all of a sudden, I got the next revelation from God that not only do I not know how to help other human beings and connect with them, up until that moment, I hadn't cared to do it. So all of my relationship had been very transactional. And I joined the Marine Corps at 17, turned 18 in boot camp. And you automatically just have this massive network of friends because I'm a Marine, you're a Marine, we're friends. I don't really need to get to know you. I just need to know that you're a Marine, I'm a Marine, and whatever you need, I'll be there for you. And so having to open up and be vulnerable to make friendships, didn't have to do that. So now I'm in, my mid 30s, and I'm having this realization that I don't know how to connect with other human beings. So it broke my heart. And that's something that God does, right? To move you, he's going to break your heart. And I started crying, and I started walking back to the hotel and praying. Oh my God, I don't know. I don't know how to change I don't know what to do about this. And I ended up continuing to do a lot of traveling, even after I came back to the US. And one of the best way to travel is, cheapest way to do it is through Airbnbs. And so I started doing Airbnbs where I'm staying, in the room. So the people that own the house are there. And of course, they're going to ask, like, hey, what brings you here? And they want to know about you. You're a stranger in their homes. And that made me realize, okay, here's an opportunity. They want to know about me. They're opening up their homes to me. So let's do this, right? How do I start talking with them? And because I was traveling and I was having a lot of adventures, storytelling just became automatic. You're telling stories about what you're doing, the adventures that you're having or that you've had. And that process made me realize, oh, you know what? It's not that hard to communicate, and people are really receptive to it. And so I started making it better and better and realizing I could drop all these little gems and information about myself. And I ended up going on about 100 first dates. And it was, I go overboard with things. So I was just like, I'm like, let's really do this. How quickly can I make connections through opening up, through sharing stories? And it was just incredible how powerful it was, and just how much it allowed me to really share who I am. And so that's how I became a personal storyteller. And then I got into teaching people how to be storytellers when, like many other people, COVID ruined all my plans. And so I started the first time storytelling broadcasts, inviting people to come share their first time stories. And that's when I discovered people are very good storytellers. And so I just put a little, I was like, here's, just a quick little course, some information on how to structure your stories and do that. And that led to self-publishing a book, and then putting together a course. And then the last 3 years since then, because I published the book in September 2020. And the last 3 years, then I did a deep dive and really doing a great deal more research, and then really improving my course, my content, creating a very powerful framework around becoming a personal storyteller. And again, it's not, it's definitely a path that God sent me on, and then has kept me on and has given me a vision for the impact that it can have, in society, in the world, and individually in people's lives.
Well, so I just have to ask, did you buy the guy the pair of pants? Did you go
I
get
did
it?
not. I did not.
Okay.
It was a complete fail. Today, if that happened, I I've changed so much. I would have no problems doing it whatsoever. Like, I'm all about reaching out and helping people now. Yeah. And
Yeah.
yeah.
No, that's great. No. So you've gone through in the military. And by the way, how many years were you in the military?
So I did a total of 21 years. So I did 10 years active duties, like straight out. Started out enlisted, got a meritorious commission. So I resigned from active duty. I was a captain. I'm at 10-year mark, because there's a saying in the Marine Corps, if it's not fun anymore, it's time to get out. And I knew I wanted to pursue entrepreneurial endeavors. I crashed and burned. So for 3 years at the different entrepreneurial endeavors that I pursued, went completely broke, foreclosed on my townhouse, and a friend had to loan me money so I could rent a room in somebody else's home. And then another friend was like, "Hey, you're still in the reserves." And we argued back and forth a little bit. He turned out to be right, which was a really good thing. And then I started taking mobilization orders. And so I did another 6 years active duty, getting mobilized, and then the remainder 5 as a reservist. And they kept promoting me. So I retired as a lieutenant colonel.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. Well, thank you
Yeah.
for your service.
Thank you.
Yeah. So okay. So you go through this, you're military, you realize you don't have the communication skills you want. You start to learn and develop this by staying at people's homes and getting in this, and you wrote this book. I mean, that's amazing on its own, this book that you've written. And now it's the book is the course, basically. It helps people kind of develop their stories and help them communicate.
Yeah, so the original book was 90 pages. I have rewritten the book. Now it's a 300-page book, which it's not published. It's not out on the market yet. This is an ongoing part of my story with God, or what he wants me to do with this book. But and so in the process of all of this, I ended up going back to school to get my master's in industrial organizational psychology. And that really helped me to do a deeper dive into the psychological concept of what that are behind what I teach. So I'm old fashioned when it comes to storytelling. You need, character, plot, setting, theme to have a story. So I took the traditional elements of storytelling, and I converted them to how to employ them for personal storytelling. And it's quite a conversion, because you're not making anything up, right? So it's like, how do I take real life and really then transition all that into a story? Because what ends up happening, Corey, is people retell and recount what happened to them, and they think that that's personal storytelling. And it isn't, because that's very flat. So you wouldn't read a book or watch a play, or go to a movie that was dimensional, to where it's only giving you what happened with no insight of anything else, right? And so that's how we're used to communicating and calling that storytelling. So I teach you how to really expand your understanding of what a personal story is. And there are key points to it. One, you have to introduce yourself as the main character of your story. Two, you have to share your thoughts, feelings, and emotions, right? And that's the biggest thing that we don't do, right? So if I'm just telling you what happened to me, that's all I'm telling you. But what I really need to share with you for you to get immersed in an understanding of who I am is I have to tell you what it made me feel, what I thought about it. And the story has to have meaning, which means I need to understand how that shaped, impacted who I am so that I'm weaving and communicating the meaning of that. So clearly, that's a whole other level of understanding the events, our experiences, and who we are. And then you start communicating that again at a completely other level that immerses people in your experience. Um, yeah.
Okay. So when someone's trying to give their story, you don't just like give a play-by-play statement. Then you're saying you need to really go into some like outside details. Is that what you're saying? I mean, bring it all together so there's some kind of vision involved.
No, so okay, so first, the first thing I tell people, you don't have one story, like you have stories. So what people, the other thing people do is exactly that. They'll link things together, right? Things that happen, and they call that a story. And that's just like that's not entertaining to someone, right? You're just giving them a bunch of information about yourself. You're not telling them anything, and you're leaving all of this space for people to make assumptions. And so it's about having a repertoire of personal stories, right? That shares aspects of who you are and knowing which story is best suited for what moment. And that story is bringing somebody into a particular time and place with you. But here's the thing. When we experience something, right? The first time I went to play pickleball, there were two. So I went to play pickleball, but there were two actual storylines that were happening. One was my intention. I intended to go play to connect because it was like a church group to connect with people. I got there and the competitive side of me came out and like my intention just went out the window, right? So then I had a conflict while I was there. And then because I got really competitive, like my shoulder really started hurting. And then I was realizing, like, hey, I'm not 20 years old anymore. So, like, all these things came out. If I try and tell the story and I put all of those ingredients in, you won't be able to follow it. I'm going to be like all over the place and you're going to be like, why are you telling me this? Like, because it's not going to be coherent, right? So I either tell the story of how I had an intention and it got derailed, or I tell the story about, spending years of trying to get my competitive side under control and just bam, one event, it pops back up, right? It depends what type of or somebody's talking about being older and overdoing it, and I can be like, yeah, I relate, and then I do a short version of the story, right? So it depends who's my audience, what type of discussion conversation are we having, and then I will take then the proper, right? So the plot, life gave me a plot, but just because everything happened, I know it's learning how to, okay, to communicate that, I'm gonna use this. So a lot of our events have that, but we try and bring it all together. And this is where we're not coherent in what we're communicating, and people can't get immersed, can't follow. And they're like, get to the point. But you don't have a point. The point is you just want to tell them what happened,
Right.
right? Well, now you you go through and you process and you're like, oh, there's this theme, meaning, then there's this meaning, and there's this meaning. And yeah.
So it's just it's like really paying attention to what somebody else is saying. So your conversation that's coming out of you, you're you're actually relating it back to their story too. So there's some build some commonality ground in it, like you say. Like if they're talking about like I went out to dinner at this restaurant and had a really good time. Well, you say, oh, yeah, I went there too and had a really good time, or I didn't have a good time, but kind of have that commonality and getting to the point a little bit quicker so everybody is interested in the basically the story.
Yeah, but it becomes more about the theme. So, and that's so as a personal storyteller, and it's why it's a process of becoming, because also you want to be an active listener, right? And it might be someone dropped feeling something, and
Yeah.
you're going to share, you're going to go completely to a different story, to a different, but you're going to relate to what the person felt, right?
Gotcha.
And so you're letting them, like, I heard you that you felt this way, and now you're sharing an experience where you ended up feeling that way, right? And really the easiest place to share a story is from a stage, or a part of a presentation, or wherever you have like a willing audience and they know that's what's taking place. The hardest place to share a story is to weaving it into a conversation. Um, so I ultimately teach you like soup to nuts, right? How to share your story, also how to weave it into conversation using hooks. But you also learn, like, I might not get to tell the whole story, but you become good at, I can give you a piece of it, right? Weaving it in. So I might not give you the full immersive experience, right? But you're getting more than still me, like, doing basic communication around what happened, right? And all this processing really like rewires your brain and how you listen, how you communicate, and what you listen for. So one of my clients, I've been coaching him for over a year, and I've probably heard like 50 of his stories, and he's definitely become like a really gifted personal storyteller. But it's funny because every few months he'll mention how he's like, other people aren't saying anything because I've taught him to share his thoughts, feelings, and emotion. So he's listening for that. And he's realizing like nobody's sharing that. And because they're not, like, I feel like there's a wall where they're not allowing me to know them. So there's a drawback to this to where you will start realizing just how much people don't actually communicate.
Gotcha. So so this gentleman you're helping, you helped him come out and he's learning your process now. How do you help others learn this process? I mean, what's the process they're going to go through when they start working with you to develop this technique you have?
Thank you. Great question. Yes. So the first step is so I created a course, or I created a school. So the world of personal storytelling. And there's a lot of free content. So you can still just learn more about, okay, what is personal storytelling? Deep dive a little bit more into that, what the framework is all about. But ultimately, right, the process is to go through the course. So learning the elements, the components, and the requirements of personal storytelling. And then I'm teaching you how to outline your stories. And so what I want people to do, like what I invite people to do, is you take the course, you outline your story, then you rehearse on, like, at home, recording your story in front of the mirror, right? Because there's, again, lots of aspects to it. And then you come to the school and to the community where everybody that's there is also becoming a personal storyteller, and you connect and you start sharing stories, right? So I host events to bring people together, share your stories, provide feedback. So the practice, and part of that practice is receiving feedback. So you can, or, you can be part of the community, or you can also get coaching to where, either from me, well, right now it's just me, but like someone who's truly trained in it. But those who are getting trained can also provide you really good feedback. And for some people, it's going to be the first time in your life where one, you're going to feel truly heard, seen, and understood. And two, that you're going to receive feedback or someone saying, this is what I heard you say. This is what you made me feel. This is what I better understand about you now. Right. Like we don't get that in our lives, and we need that. It's just because so often, like you said something, you're like, and it's cricket. Like, how did did that land? Like, what are they thinking about me? And you're trying to read their body language, and you're like, "Mm, okay." And then you might not hear ever from them again, right? And you're like, well, I guess they didn't like what I had to say. Um, and that, this is when we start building walls, and that shuts us down,
Yeah.
right? Or someone has a very negative reaction to what we say, and you're like, I don't know what again. Well, this you'll get that feedback. So then you can tweak, keep practicing with different people, and then you get to experience, okay, if I share the same story with 5 to 10 different people, are they gonna provide me the same feedback, or are they all hearing me differently? And that's gonna help you better understand how you come across, but okay, maybe I need to know more about them, right? So it goes back to like, what do I know about my audience? Because I'm pretty sure it's not what I'm communicating. But you'll get less and less of that because you'll hone in your story more and more, and you'll really start understanding, like, when I want to communicate this is how I structure it, right? And then once you have that, then you're comfortable to like, okay, let me take, at my workplace, with my friends, with people that, strangers that I meet, or, practicing stories for interviews, for dating, for, business networking, like you're building your repertoire. So you have the stories for different environment, different people that you meet. And you're very comfortable sharing them because you rehearse, you practice, and then you bring them out into the world, and then you see how that changes the level at which, like, you're connecting with people, and the space that you start creating because you're being open and vulnerable. People are going to start being a great deal more open and vulnerable with you, and you need to grow up and mature to be at the level of being able to receive that too. But you'll get that too as you're practicing sharing stories and letting other people know, this is what I'm hearing, this is what I'm understanding, learning from you based on your story. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I was thinking the exact same thing, and you brought it up right there. I mean, this can work. I mean, in networking with other people, business owners, if we're talking to clients. I mean, you mentioned the dating scenario. I can only imagine how that could change some people's lives and relationships just in that category. So what ideally though, I mean, since we're here today and the listeners are listening, what's kind of your ideal client? I mean, we all say, oh, everybody's ideal client, they just need to learn this process. But I mean, what's who do you like to help the most?
So ideally, the client that I want it to go into corporation and organizations, right? I want to go take what I teach and work on enhancing their company culture through what I teach, so that RJs start understanding it is about people, right? How do you make it about people? How do you ensure that people are properly understanding each other, communicating and connecting with one another, and for everyone, but bring it to an organization and having it shift, a company culture. That's when people are going to really start realizing, like, how powerful it is, because it does raise your self-awareness. It does change your emotional intelligence. It does help you regulate, your emotion. It does make you more open-minded and understanding, to receive, who other people are. It also, like, it allows you to understand your own decision making, your problem solving. Like, it's so much more than just telling, of, stories. Like, it just rewires and reprograms you to have a much greater understanding of what the human experience is all about, how we're all connected. So go into organization so that it changes the organization, and as organization change, then we impact the greater culture, right? So I I have three things, right? I say that personal storytelling, it's all, to leverage it to battle division, loneliness, and stagnation. And it's about transforming hearts, changing lives, and remaking cities. Because as we organization change, and I want to bring, so that's why it's like an individual client. Like I want to bring first time storytelling networking events to neighborhoods where neighbors get to know each other, right? It's about like undoing a lot of damage that's been done in the last few decades where we don't connect with each other anymore, right? We don't make the heart to heart connections, get to know one another as human beings, make space for each other. And because that's what leads to helping one another, right? And that's why like battling division, the way that people are able to sow division is because they make you believe that's another group is completely different than you. And they're not. Like once you really start understanding the human experience, you realize there's not any other human being that's absolutely completely different than you. Their lives just played out differently, but they had a lot of the same experience, and they've especially experienced the same emotions and thoughts that you've had, right? So yeah, so that's why like no, I don't have like one. I want to get into organization and just see transformation happen. I mean, I want to run case studies around this. Yeah, bring neighborhoods and city and start, but it's starting small, like having
Yep.
friends, like have friends, like personal storytelling time for friends and discover how much you don't actually know each other, but learn to get to know each other, in families. You know, there's the close communication bias. The people closest to us are the people we listen to the least, which ends up being the people that we should know, that should know us more, know us the least, because they let all their assumptions get in the way, and to actually knowing who we are. And again, that creates so much pain in humanity. um yeah.
I can see that. I mean, getting into those bigger areas and helping more people at one time, and then them all learning together would be pretty impactful, really.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
very, very impactful.
And then it's one of those, you're going to then take that home, right? And because it's going to change how you communicate with your family, and then you're going to be looking for your family to be able to communicate back with you at that level. And that it yeah, to me it's such a game changer. um because here's the other thing. Right, storytelling can be this very powerful, amazing thing. It can also be this very evil, manipulative, controlling. Once you become a personal storyteller and you understand storytelling, you will know when the media, when advertisers, when, right, are trying to control you or trying to manipulate you. You will know when somebody is activating a story to make you feel something, to get something out of you, right? So what I teach is who level relationship making storytelling. The vast majority of what you experience out there is what level content, right? So they're telling you a story because of what they want to get from you. And people fall for it all the time. Not that it's necessarily a bad thing, right? But they're playing on your emotions to get something out of you. You'll start realizing that that's what's happening, and then you'll be like, okay, no, I'm cool with it. Or be like, yeah, no, you're trying to manipulate me through a story to do this, and that's like, I'm out, right? Right.
Yep.
Because you'll be wired to listen to it, and to know that that's what's happening. And so really having the understanding of everything that has impact and influence on you, that in itself is a game changer. when
Yeah.
you gain control of that back. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can be the great storyteller, then you're also you're the great listener to keep yourself kind of out of maybe some bad scenarios, that
Yeah.
it's yeah, I could definitely see that when you learn the entire process and you have that availability to tell a story and also to hear the
Yeah.
story.
Like somebody just brought me into their story and don't agree with it.
Yeah,
But so many people, because it is so powerful, people are immersing you into a story. And because the brain is wired for it and they know that. And this is where it's manipulative, right? And like people know the brain's is wired for story. So they're leveraging it. And you might not even realize that that's what's happening.
yeah, wow, yeah, yeah. That's definitely a different take on it by
Yeah.
all means. So our listeners are here. You're giving us great information. How do they get a hold of you?
So I invite you to the world of personal storytelling. So if you go to HTTPS personal storytelling school, you can get started with different courses. You can contact me at Ann@firsttimestorytelling.com. Um, yeah, that's I need to get back onto social media. So I'm not going to put out my social media handles out there because I need to re-engage. But yeah, there's a lot of noise out there, and I don't want to. I'm not out to create more noise.
Right.
Um, yeah, and yeah,
So it's probably the easiest one is Ann@personalstorytelling.com.
yeah, just by email or like just come over to the school and get started with the training, and that's where I run a lot of different live events there. Yeah.
Okay, well, there you go, listeners. Now you know how to get a hold of her. How now they get a hold of you. What's the first step they're going to take with you?
It's getting to the training. It really is. I every so often I'll offer live training. So if you do look up first time storytelling on Eventbrite, if you want live training, because maybe you have a tough time with pre-recorded content, then through Eventbrite is the best way to catch some of the live classes that I
Okay.
do. But it's to get into the training, right? I I won't coach someone that anymore that hasn't gone through the training, because you're you you just not you're wasting, like, I won't let you waste your money because I'm gonna be saying to you what would be in the training. It's better to take the training, apply the training, and then come and then, because coaching is all about expediting and getting things to the next level faster. So the first step is really getting into the how to become a personal storyteller course, and and don't buy the course. It's the other advice. The course is almost $2,000. The basic subscription, and you can access the course through the basic subscription, is $37. Whereas this insane price difference is because I want you to join the community. I want you to subscribe, become a subscriber, and join the community. So the process that we discuss, you get involved with that. Because otherwise you'll take the course and it, you won't apply it. It's human nature. Like very few people will take a course and really apply it and put it out there. You need support, you need community, you need accountability. So, it's to subscribe. And are we going to talk about the offer, or am I going to wait for you to bring that up, or?
Sure. No, go ahead. Let's go with the offer. I like it.
Yeah. So absolutely, if you sign up, you buy a subscription and you contact me and you give the name of the podcast, I will give you a buy one get one free subscription so that you can bring a family member into the train with you, because like I said, once you're trained, it's going to bother you that everybody else around you is not. So I'll give you another free subscription so that you can have spouse, family member, whoever, that to join you so that they get trained, and then you can actually, initiate the process of, like, hey, we have date night. Let's,
Yeah.
come prepared with a story. And then really rediscover the people in your life or discover who they really are for the first time. And this is great, I mean, like our parents, like there's just so much of our history of who they are that we don't know, that once you start hearing their stories from their childhood and teenage years and like their challenges, like, and it's just like so many people, again, they've never heard those things from their parents, right? From their loved ones, from your kids, um, like actually getting from their perspective what the experience was like, what it was like for you being in their lives, but getting from their perspective, it just, again, it initiates just a whole new level of communication and conversation and connection. So yeah, so
Yeah.
far as long as you're subscribed, the other person will have the subscription for free. Yeah.
What a way to leave a legacy too, to get these stories and get them number one passed on to the younger generations, but maybe even have them recorded. And you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
What a way to leave a legacy of the whole family scenario, especially with technology we have today. I mean, I can just see it. I mean, I know I work with the group and they kind of do that and they build they're estate planners, so they build some trust and stuff. And that's part of their deal, is to make sure there's some kind of it's not I don't want to call it storytelling, but there's they got everything detailed out, what's kind of been in the family, that kind of stuff, so everybody knows where everything came from, why it's there, and whatnot. But I can imagine just having the whole story itself there would be pretty impactful
Yeah.
for each generation to keep this motivationally going on.
Yeah. I tell people it's a great way to archive your life.
Yep.
And that's where the name of the company comes from. So when I first started, I focused very specifically on first time stories, because everyone will start realizing a lot of your stories, like your most impactful stories, are actually going to be first time stories, because the first time is when we truly learn, like we first experience it and we truly learn. And get a group of people in in the room and ask them, like, okay, everyone share the first time you lied. You're gonna have some doozy stories, but it's gonna be but you'll see the common thread and you'll realize like the driving factors of why human beings lie. If you get everyone in the room to tell the first time story, their first car, you're going to realize there's so many commonalities and yet so many differences. So it's such a powerful way of, like, in a family capturing, but in organizations and families and so on and so forth, but you're just capturing some really interesting information about the person, and again, like what drives them, what has impacted them, what has made them who they are, like what lessons have they learned. And so based on like different prompts, you can really like get some really interesting core information about a family, right? That you do want to you want to record it and keep it from generation to generation. Or like I say, even for yourself, right? What if you get dementia or Alzheimer,
No.
where you'd
Yeah.
have recording of you sharing to yourself, your stories, and you'd be like, oh, I really did that. Like that really like happened to me, right? Like to me, what a gift you can give yourself if in
Yeah.
case that happens. But also obviously, for your family to also enjoy for generations and generations. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the gift to yourself, as long as you can remember where you put it so you can look at it again, I guess, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, but here's the other thing, right? Like we want to, it's capturing also, because there's certain stories that I share to where like it's very important for me to highlight that it took place and this and this and this technology didn't exist, so that and that's part of sharing, ensuring that you properly share the story, right? Is
Yeah.
understanding like what details are necessary, because if I'm telling it to a certain generation, they will automatically think, right? The first time I drove across country, there was no GPS, there was no phone, right? You did this by map. Like certain people have a zero concept
Yeah.
of, what that would be like. So if you don't capture those stories, that's lost.
Yeah.
That, how we used to do things, it gets completely lost. And then this is where our generations cannot understand what living at that time was like, right? If you don't capture those stories. And then you leave it up to whatever the test book is going to teach them.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. Well, this is great stuff, Ann. I mean, so I encourage our listeners to reach out to Ann. Go reach out, get on things. She's giving you a 2-for-1 deal, basically. I mean, how can you lose? You, your spouse, family member, son, daughter, whatever it may be. This would be a great family piece, I think, for everybody to get involved in, and learn a little something, and get the stories out. Have conversations, start to learn. So we're going to bring this to a close, Ann, as we're coming up to time here. What's something you would like to tell everybody, that maybe I'm missing here, that you would like them to know first before we close this out?
I think we did pretty good covering everything. I just want to reiterate that it has changed my life, and I think that is the I always like I my first businesses were about what I wanted and what like I was good at. And this business is really about how what I learned and what I teach. First, it completely changed me. And like I'm definitely an advocate like for I know this works because I know how closed off. Like I grew up being told how closed off I was. And and having done a complete 180 to this process, it took me 10 years. I can help you do it much, 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 much faster. So, but I can tell you that it really does work. Um, and I'm so grateful that I had that experience in the park, and that God, took me on this journey and to learn how to do this, and that He's tasked me with the purpose and calling to help others.
I want to thank you, Ann, for being on the show. Um, so for our listeners, this was Ann Bernard on the Lost Coast podcast. Please reach out to her if you are interested in being a better communicator and learning how to tell your story properly and getting the key points across. So with that being said, here we are signing off on the Lost Coast podcast, and we will see you guys next time. Thanks, Ann, and we'll see you guys all
Thank
later.
you.
Bye.